Hello and welcome to another episode of Sexual Confidence on Tap with Shannon, Ethridge, and friends. And I have my old friend, Reverend Dr. Angie McCarty.
It's so long.
So many titles, so much prestige. I am so proud of this doctorate that you have earned. You're not granted a doctorate. You weren't given an honorary doctorate. You busted your butt and you earned this PhD behind your name, or actually D-Min.
No, D-Min
behind your name. So we're diving back into our conversation around messy sex. But before we do, Angie, I feel like I owe our listeners an apology. So is it okay if I take a moment to go there?
Go there.
Speaking of messy, never in my 30 years of ministry has my life been so messy. And that's why it has taken so long to get around to episodes 3, 4, 5, however many we're going to do on this topic. Yep. Yeah. So this year has been such a challenge on our family because in February, my mom had meningitis, encephalitis, and COVID. And then 4 days later, developed a bleeding ulcer that had to have emergency surgery. So she almost died twice in the same week. I had to move her to Springfield, Missouri from Texas after having lived in Texas for 60 years. I've had to move her to 2 different facilities here. This is on top. And by the way, she has dementia and has had for the past 3 years. And I have been navigating that journey on my own. My brother is not available. And so this is on top of caring for a husband who has gone through cancer treatments and chemo and now is allergic to everything under the sun because of what the chemo treatments did to his immune system. So being the caregiver for a mom with dementia and a husband with cancer, and then also we've been building out our 3,200 square foot barn, turning it into a barn-dominium so we can use the main house as a VRBO and where we do our workshops. So I've had major construction going on as well. So 3 huge things that were pulling me in a multitude of different directions that the podcast just had to take the back burner for a little while. So part of me says I don't apologize for that because my mom and my husband and our life is more important. But Angie, I was thrilled to get this text message from a listener and client of mine. And she said, come on, ladies, don't leave me hanging. I need, with like 10 E's, I need parts 3, 4, and 5, and however many you want to do on this subject. And she said, I am absolutely loving this. I have been walking in freedom for a while now, thanks to our counseling sessions, which are coaching sessions. I can't call them counseling, but thanks to our coaching sessions, I'm likely getting remarried next year. Hopefully any day now. He's going to be popping the question. I hope that he has. You know who you are. I won't even say her first name, but you get the idea of we have left our listeners hanging. So yes. I'm so glad that we're back in the podcast chair and diving in today. And I understand your life has been a little bit messy lately too.
Always. I mean, when is it ever not messy when you have a whole bunch of kids and sister-in-law who lives with us who has Down syndrome, and she is going deeper in the throes of dementia every day to losing her hearing and things like that, which is a normal progression for someone who's 55 and has Down syndrome. 20 years ago, she wouldn't still be here. So every day with her is a gift. The other big thing, this sounds so insignificant compared to what you've been going through, but I became a football mom this year for the first time. And we have had 3 kids in marching band. So I think I thought I understood like the harriedness of the fall semester. At marching band, even at a competition level marching band, was nothing compared to football and how that takes over not just your life, but the entire family's life.
Right.
Yeah. So we came through that, and, just the normal work and and growing your marriage and not becoming complacent and trying to be healthy myself. Like, when is life ever not messy?
Right. Right. And what I want to do right now is take an opportunity to take our listeners on a little journey, apply this to yourself, learn vicariously through this conversation. Angie, when you and I first met, remember, you were a single youth pastor and you longed to be married and you longed to have children. And here you are.
I know.
Like we can't forget what a blessing
Yeah.
it is to have loved ones that we need to care for. Because like you said, every day is a gift when life is precarious.
Yep.
And marriage does require work and raising children does require work. And it takes a lot of energy and focus. And I know that women especially really struggle with having sexual energy because of all the other demands of life. So I just want to say to all of you, not just women, but men too, we get it. We
Yeah.
learning to not just find time for sexual and emotional connection and relationship building, intimacy building, learning to make the time, not just find the time, because you'll never find the time, making the time for what is important, because this is what Charlie and I have learned through this season. I think that when you are going through life-threatening things, there is a preciousness to life, if that's a word, preciousness,
Mhm.
that making love, leaning in, looking for comfort, looking to relax, looking to take your mind off of the multitude of decisions that you have to make as a caregiver or whatever is going on in your life. It's like a vacation that you have to refill your cup and recharge your batteries. Do you find that leaning in with Jonathan and making time to make love helps you keep your sanity as a pastor, as a
Oh,
mom?
yes, without a doubt. That is what reconnects us better than anything else and calls us back to that place of wonder and awe in our relationship. That something that God created that is as precious as sex can bring two people together at a level of intimacy that sometimes I feel is not human. Most of the time. I mean,
It's
it is
otherworldly.
sacred. It is. Yeah.
It's heavenly.
I'm at work right now and he is also on the staff at Church of the Resurrection. So I'm just gonna let you go and I'm gonna go walk down to his office and
Now, if we
and
have
then be
that
super
impact on our
awkward.
listeners that they're like, let me press the pause button and go make love to my
Yeah.
mate, then our job is done. Sexual
Yes.
confidence on tap.
That's
You're welcome. Your
amazing.
cup is full. Go pour it out. So
Love it.
speaking of building out our barn, um, it takes a lot of time and effort and energy to build a house inside a house. We are on the downhill slide here with the last 2%. But speaking of building, the last 2 episodes, I feel as if were very foundational to our conversation. And
Mhm.
just like you would never, ever, ever build a house without laying a strong foundation. Fortunately, our foundation was already here for this barn dominium project. That's the one thing I haven't had to do is lay a foundation. I've just been able to build. But some people may feel like, let's just hurry up and get to the part of just tell me what to do. Just tell me what I can do prior to marriage. Tell me what I can do inside of marriage. Tell me what to tell my kids. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm not going to do that because I feel as if that would be building the house without the strong foundation.
Right.
To take the time to really unpack what we've been told, what we've been taught, what we've understood about scripture, or more accurately, what we've misunderstood about scripture, I think is absolutely vital to the conversation. So if you're just tuning into this episode, I would really encourage you to start with part 1, lay the foundation, and we're going to continue with foundation laying today. I want to know more about your research. I want to know more about what you teased our listeners with on the last episode about embodiment theology, because I didn't know that there was a term for this concept that God is sexual. in nature, not sexually active. Like we so humanize it and bring it down to earth and go, no, he's not, because he doesn't have a wife or whatever. It's like, stop, just stop. God transcends gender. He transcends orientation. He transcends the body. But God is spiritual and sexual in nature because he designed human beings in his image, and we are designed to be spiritual and sexual in nature because we are a reflection of him. So do you want to start with embodiment theology, or do you want to unpack some of your research? Because I'm dying to know what you learned. Like, this is not just Angie's philosophies and theologies personally. You had to do a high level of academic research to earn this doctorate.
Yep.
So where do you want to start?
I don't know. So the research that I did, so let's talk about the difference between a PhD and a DMin, doctorate of ministry, not like demon. If I say it really fast, then it makes me sound like
demon?
I have like horns or something. I'm a
demon.
demon. Yes.
You have enough of those.
Someone say that I already had that.
It reminds me of my favorite bumper sticker. Sometimes I wrestle with my demons. Other times we just snuggle. Tell us about the difference between a demon and a PhD.
A PhD has a higher bar for original research, and a DMin can depend upon research that's already been done. Okay. So I could take the research that in particular Linda K. Klein did in her book Pure, which was kind of my jumping off point. Her research was primarily narrative. She spoke to people who had been harmed by the purity movement. And she made this case that the church had done damage. That was the place where I wanted to delve in and understand a little bit more what that damage felt like and how it could be remedied, is to trite a word, how we could find healing from the harm that the church had done to people. Which
starts with acknowledgement of the pain.
Right? And the church
Linda Klein really lifted the veil to expose the reality that there is pain. And I don't want to lessen the importance of narrative research. I think that Brene Brown would be a classic example of a narrative researcher. So I need to have Linda K, or I want to say Linda K. Klein. I don't know that that's her middle initial. I need to have Linda Klein.
No, Linda K. K-A-Y. Klein.
Oh, is that her name? That's why I get that in my head. Okay, thank you for clarification.
Yeah,
we need to have her on the show to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, continue.
Yeah, and to your listeners, if you have not read her book, it is an easy read. It is heartfelt. It's heartbreaking. So out of a doctorate of ministries research has to come a practical ministry solution. So based on my research, I created a 4-week small group class that I then implemented to a group of women online. And that class, that small group experience, was designed to heal some of that damage, to provide a different way of talking about sexuality, looking at sexuality, thinking of ourselves as sexual beings, and reclaiming some of that power too that we have, and our agency to become the people that God created us to be. Okay, so that's kind of the foundation for the research. Let me just briefly tell you about the research. I created a survey that was designed to identify people who grew up in the church through adolescence primarily. While they were adolescents, they adopted a purity-based sexual ethic. Then as adults, they were still in the church, but had changed their sexual ethic from one of purity to more inclusivity and openness, or they were just questioning, like, what is the alternative? Is there an alternative? And they felt negative emotions. I know that emotions are not positive or negative, but they felt conflict, anger, betrayal, any of these emotions that I listed that were not happy. Like, yeah, I feel okay that I think differently now than what I was taught. So I sent this
Called a
survey.
paradigm shift.
Right. They had a paradigm shift, and they were experiencing cognitive dissonance because of that shift.
Explain cognitive dissonance.
Yes, conflict in your head. That you have two competing, or more than two, you have competing thoughts that you can't reconcile. And a lot of times when we're experiencing cognitive dissonance, we'll go and seek therapy. We'll find someone to talk to and try to sort through those issues. I mean, usually when people seek marital therapy, it's because of cognitive dissonance, that this is what I think a relationship should be like, but this is what it actually is. And I don't know how to talk about that. And I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So that
When there's-
doing part, that next step.
Right. And so often there is a conflict between our sexuality and our spirituality because of what we've
Yes.
been taught.
Because that's how the church set it up. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
A
what the
no-win
church taught.
situation.
They set us up for
Sex is
cognitive dissonance.
Sex is a dirty, nasty, awful thing. So you should
Uh-huh.
save it for your husband or wife.
Right. And yeah, I'll get back to that because there's a primary piece of that came out of my research to explain just that. So I put this survey out in a couple of different places on the internet. I sent it to my whole personal group, email group. I posted it on my Facebook page, so just anybody could take it. But then I also posted it to some Facebook groups that I'm in for deconstructing evangelicalism. That's where the majority of my results came from. And while that is, in the scholarly sense, limiting, that I focused on a group that would have the tendency to confirm my biases.
Right.
I did that on purpose because those
If you're
were the
doing
people I
narrative
was looking
research,
for.
they need
Yep.
to have a story to tell.
Yes. So I actually cut off the survey at 300 responses, which was and is the most responses any doctorate of ministry candidate has ever received to a survey at St. Paul School of Theology. And
There you go.
I just have to say that
You
that's
record
because
breaker,
people
you.
want to talk about this stuff.
Yes.
They want a safe place where they can say, I'm really struggling here. So from those 300 people, I identified 82 who fit those characteristics, had adopted a more conservative, purity-based ethic. Now we're struggling to articulate an ethic, and they were experiencing conflict or cognitive dissonance from that. I invited those 82 people. Oh, I should also say, only women and only straight women, because I didn't want to bring in more variables into my research, right?
Okay.
So men may think differently, and I didn't want to sort through that. And LGBTQ people may think differently, and I didn't want to have that variable in there too. It's not that men and LGBTQ folk don't struggle with these
They have a
exact same
voice,
things.
absolutely.
Right.
But
And
you just looked at this segment of the population.
yeah, right. So I invited those 82 women to have a 1-hour interview with me. 26 of them said yes. So I did 26 hours of interviews. And I will tell you that those 26 hours confirmed for me why God put me on this earth. It was shocking and humbling how people just opened their entire lives to me and were honest and vulnerable from the very beginning. They didn't know me. I mean, at all. We exchanged emails. And they shared their pain. It was just phenomenal. All of those women
ministry just listening.
Well, that's what you do too. Yeah. So of those 26, 7 women agreed to participate in this 4-week class. 1 woman declined. Everyone else was interested, but couldn't make the time frame that we settled on. And in these 4 weeks, we talked about the foundation, that we've talked about in the previous 2 episodes. We talked about hermeneutics. We watched some funny videos from Jane the Virgin and the flower being crumpled up. And this is what your sexuality is like when you have given yourself to somebody else. So, and we talked about, I mean, we started by sharing our stories, and again, they all just opened up in front of each other. We laughed, we cried. We talked about the foundation of marriage and what marriage is in our culture and how that compares to marriage in ancient times, in biblical times. And from these 7 women, the results that they gave, the feedback that they gave was that this was a healing experience, that it also helped them identify how much work they needed to do. But if what I was able to offer gave them just a piece of what that freedom, that healing could feel like, then I did my job and will continue to do my job.
This sounds a lot like the work that Charlie and I do at Couples at the Well, at Women at the Well too, but certainly at Couples at the Well, where we give husbands and wives an opportunity to deconstruct that which was constructed but is no longer serving them well because of that cognitive dissonance. That's a very academic term.
Yes.
But I think that it resides in people so deeply that they might not even recognize. It's like the frog in the water thing. They don't even recognize how much tension they feel in their spirit between their spirituality and their sexuality. But when you get them talking and sharing their stories, you hear it, you sense it, you feel it, and calling it to their attention. I think that just to say, I see you, I hear you, I feel your pain, that is powerful shit that helps people get beyond the hangups that it created.
Right.
I just feel like the hangups are what holds people back sexually, and they don't even see it as a hurdle or a hangup. But yes, continue.
Well, from the interviews rose 5 common themes that the majority of the respondents held. And this was how I designed my curriculum from these 5 themes.
Okay.
So the first theme that rose was that sexuality was always presented as non-nuanced. It was an either-or issue. And the interview participants have realized through experience and through life that it is an incredibly complex issue. Number 2, the purity movement promised a great sex life within marriage if a couple didn't have sex before marriage. And it also promised that premarital sex would be awful and would damage a person's spirit. And they experienced that neither of those were a reality for them. This is the one that I said I'd go back to. This is the cognitive dissonance. So people were told that like God is going to come down and hit you with a bolt of lightning if you have sex before you're married, and it's going to be really, really hard.
At the very least, strike you down with chlamydia and infertility.
And probably pregnancy and death. Yeah. And I talked to several women.
Not God's character and nature. Not saying that consequences aren't real sometimes, but it's not God's punishment for not doing the right thing, quote unquote.
Right.
But that is the mentality.
And it is. And so they had sex for the first time and they went, wait, this was really good. And wait, I don't think that I'm permanently damaged. And no, we're not going to get married, but I'm okay with that. And it wasn't this trauma that they thought it was going to be. And then and then others would say, I waited to have sex with the promise that this was going to be amazing. And it wasn't. And I've recently had a conversation with my ex-husband. Imagine how comfortable this would be, that as I think about publishing this and my experience with him being a large part of what drove me to this research, that we waited to have sex with each other before we were married. And our sex life was so difficult. So I wanted to make sure that that was his experience too, so that I didn't like write a book and then have to pull all that information because he wouldn't sign off on it.
Right.
So it was his experience too. And I think, if I'm being really honest, that I believed my sex life was bad because I had had sex with other people before I was married, and that was punishment.
So how sad that it wasn't genuine damage caused by the sex. It was damage caused by your belief that you were damaged.
Yes.
Talk about a
Yes.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, without a doubt. Yes.
Yeah, because
Yep.
you had been taught that.
Not just taught that, I think that in the purity movement, there is this sense of ingraining it. I mean, it becomes a part of who you are, not what you've done. So I was dirty, and I was bringing my dirtiness to a relationship, to a marriage that I didn't save myself for. Now, neither did he, but did I ever think, oh, well, he had sex with other people too. Maybe it's partly his responsibility. Oh, no, it was all mine. I mean,
It's always the woman's fault.
It's always the woman's fault. Well, okay, so let's go on to our next number 3 common theme. Women are responsible for their own purity and the purity of their male partner.
She should not dress
Mhm.
immodestly. She should not awaken his desires. She should not tease or flaunt. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yes. Number 4, shame was and is always interconnected with sexuality. This is so not biblical. It's just not.
Right. Right. Well, I mean,
Right.
I immediately think of the Garden of Eden of there was no guilt, no shame, no inhibition because sin hadn't entered the picture when they were commanded to be fruitful and multiply. So shame came in post fall of man, but it was never God's intention from the start.
Right. We read that passage thinking that there is shame in their nakedness, but I read a very good scholarly article, and you're always free to disagree with scholarly articles. Like, that doesn't make them inherently perfect. But this article claimed that the shame was not towards their sexuality or their nakedness. The shame was because they felt shame, and shame is not godly. So that was an interesting
Wow. So it kind of goes along
read.
with what you just described about your own feeling of damage. It wasn't because you were truly damaged. It was because you believed you were damaged.
Yep.
So the shame was because they felt shame or embarrassment.
Yep.
Well, there's a paradigm shift.
Right.
That was worth the price of admission for today's episode.
And that's a wrap.
Yeah. Really, mic drop.
Yep. Okay. And then number 5, and this is the saddest one to me, that the majority of interview participants felt negativity towards the church, not the church where they heard these messages, the church universal.
God.
Right.
This is, you just touched a raw nerve that keeps me focused on this ministry for 30 years, and I'll do it for another 30 years if God gives me that many, is that people's sexuality is my secondary concern. My primary concern is what has the sexual damage that the church and we collectively as a church body that we have done, what has that done to their spiritual life? Ultimately, I'm most concerned with how people feel about their relationship with God or how they feel about God's character and nature, because we have jacked that up for people because of these conversations around sex.
And we have jacked up how people feel, how people relate to themselves too. And our LGBTQ brothers and sisters are the ones who have taught us this, because when the church said, well, yes, you're a sexual being, but you can't get married, therefore you can't have sex. What they said was, I, as a person, am not separable from my being as a sexual person.
We have expected people to divorce their their sexuality from their spirituality, and God should be enough for you, even though
Right.
God made you a sexual being.
Right.
Talk
And
about
we,
cognitive dissonance.
well, and as heterosexuals, the church doesn't say anything to us because we're considered the norm.
Mm.
I mean, the numerical majority. Um, we don't get any teachings from the church because I think the church assumed that our sexuality, that our just being human, that sex was going to come easy, that understanding our sexuality was just, it's just who we are. Now, they never taught that. So the church was saying to LGBTQ people, you have to divorce yourself, while there were plenty of straight people who were separated from their sexuality that got no acknowledgement.
Right.
So that this is layered. It's like an onion.
So
You peel
messy.
one back, and if we include embodiment theology in this, it's going to be an hour-long podcast, and that's never what we are going for. So maybe we need to just give a little tickler for that.
Okay, so we'll save embodiment theology for next time, but I also want to say that at some point we need to also do an episode on, we're not villainizing the church, we're not villainizing certain Christians. We would have to villainize ourselves if we were going to make it that. I do want to do an episode on what we believe these good-hearted people, including ourselves, probably intended, and the misunderstandings that they held, just so there can be forgiveness and healing. Because to just be angry at the church and mad at the people who taught you this and blame it on them is not the solution to healing. But we'll save that for another conversation too. Continue on with your research. These are 5 really strong points that I don't think anyone can argue with, that are realities.
And that is kind of the crux of all of this, that the harm and what harm has been done, we need to understand so that we can work towards healing and wholeness. But the baseline that harm has been done, the church's teachings caused harm with the best of intentions, Shannon. I fully believe that. So I'm excited that we'll get back to that. That now the church is the only place where this can be fully healed, because it's not just becoming reconciled to yourself or to your partner, but to God, and recognizing that yes, it was this institution that taught harmful practices and an ethos. And the church can be a really good place where God is alive and offers freedom and hope.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is an opinion question. And this may just be splitting hairs. It could be not either or, but both and. But I know that when I'm working with a couple, I have to work with them as individuals before I can really identify what they need as a couple, because they're coming into that relationship with 2 individual paradigms and individual experiences, and helping them heal as a woman and as a man, if they're a straight couple, helping them go through that process is foundational to helping them heal as a married couple. So the question that I pose to you is, people who have written off God and faith and church and Christianity altogether, do you think that it's necessary that they heal that relationship with God before they can fully heal themselves? Or do you think that it's possible for a person to start with trying to heal themselves, and that that's foundational to reconnecting with God?
So I'm going to propose a third option here. I think that any healing we do on ourselves is from God, whether a person recognizes that or not.
So it's
because
not
I'm,
either or,
it's not either. Oh,
it's
hey,
both
it's
and.
messy. It's messy. That it all
It's
happens at the same
complicated.
time, right?
Well,
Yes.
I always describe sexuality and spirituality as two sides of the same coin. So basically, you're
Yes.
you're saying we work on the coin, we heal the coin, and it's not that we
Yes.
heal one side of the coin, but not the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
If we help the coin, we help the coin.
We would say that a healthy person is a well integrated person,
Mm.
and someone who is having difficulty integrating is compartmentalizing. And so
Mm.
it's not that we heal our family of origin issues and then can move on to our marital issues and then to our parenting issues. And then only at the end, when all of that stuff is tied up, we can then go on to heal our great big huge relationship with God. Everything affects everything. And if we don't believe that about ourselves, we're sunk.
Right. We
Yeah.
can't oversimplify the complexity of our sexuality and our spirituality and how they work together in tandem. But here's the really exciting part that I want to end with, because I realized that we have to cut it off somewhere so we can pick it up
I
again.
know. I
My
know.
grandmother used to say, you got to hurry up and leave so you can hurry up and come back. We got to
Oh,
hurry up and
that's
wrap
so
this up
sweet.
so we can pick it back up again. So, forgot what I was going to say.
Well, then let me jump in here. As I think about publishing and know that I have to have a more concise pitch, like what is my 2 sentence elevator pitch? I don't have it quite down to 2 sentences, but what I just want to say is that the church has to be comfortable in the mess. That the church has to recognize that this is so much more complicated. And humans have to recognize that it's so much more complicated than we have ever been willing to talk about before. And does that mean we might not have hard and clear answers
Black
for
and white
people?
answers, right? We have to get
Yeah,
comfortable with the discomfort. We have
with
to
the
suspend
nuance.
our judgment. We have to suspend the cancel culture thing. We have to
Yep.
we have to stop not listening to other
Yeah.
people's perspectives. We have to just
Yeah.
open our mind and heart wide to what the Holy Spirit might want to say to us through someone who's really messing with our paradigms. But now I remember what I was
And
going to say, Angie.
you know where else we very naturally embrace nuance in the church? When we talk about the two greatest commandments, the greatest commandments, to love God and love neighbor. That's just about the most nuanced thing I could ever imagine. What does that look like? There are 5,432,000 ways that we can do the greatest commandment. And we talk about that freely and we embrace the nuance.
Only
There.
one way to have sex: missionary position, lights off, Saturday night between cisgendered, heterosexual husband and wife.
Mm-hmm.
And is
Yeah,
that reflective of what's really happening on this planet? I don't
not so much.
think so.
Okay,
Based
back to
on,
you before you forget it again.
yeah. So, what I was going to say is integrating that sexuality and spirituality, because both of them feel whole and healed, and now they're operating in tandem with one another instead of creating this tension and cognitive dissonance with one another. Having those two fuel each other and have a fusion and a synergy there, that makes you feel more alive, more
The
grateful, more
Yes.
in love with God, in love with your body, in
Mhm.
love with your pleasure, in love with your mate than anything known to man. And it's better than any drug, any alcohol, any addiction. Like it is the
Mhm.
goal of being fully alive, and being
Wait,
fully
and
alive is what glorifies God. So I hope that
unless
people
it,
make it their goal to heal both of these areas of their lives.
we'll give the caveat and say, unless it's a sexual addiction, because that's a thing too.
That is a
So,
thing. Well, yeah,
yes,
when I said the word
yes,
addiction, it's like, do you really want to compare the two?
yeah, but
It's
I see,
messy.
yes. Oh God.
Even just the words and the vocabulary and the conversations around these topics are messy. But
Yeah, and it's okay.
sometimes getting messy is fun.
Struggle.
Remember kindergarten, finger painting on your desk, or
Oh,
you know,
Shannon,
shaving cream all over a
that's
balloon,
not where I went.
razor. Like this is what
Remember that time back in the late 90s when Shannon and Angie got into a Jello wrestling pit.
Okay,
That
we
was
teased them with
messy.
that last time. So now I feel
It's
like we
a
need
true
to at
thing.
least give a little bit of an explanation.
Okay, it was camp.
Of camp that year was JESUS, but we styled it like JELLO. So Jello was a theme throughout the week. We had Jello at every meal. We had these Jello balls that we could throw against the wall. Like Jello was the theme. So of
It
course,
was.
the dean and the co-dean, which I love that your title was indicative of
Princess.
a drug, because you are very
Oh, yeah.
addictive. The co-dean got into a kid-sized swimming pool full of Jello for a Jello wrestling match. We were not in bikinis. It was not
No.
sexual. It was not intended to
It
erupt.
was so fun.
Fun, and the kids never forgot it. I still have kids in my youth group who are now in their 40s, which is really weird, telling me, remember when you Jello wrestled with Angie Bass? I just have to laugh. It's like, yes, I'll
Me
never
too.
forget that.
It's great. And
Never
on
forget.
that visual,
Yeah.
I can't wait
thank
until
you.
our next one.
Yes, yes. We
Okay.
thank you for hanging into this multiple part conversation that I feel like is so important. Like the feeling that Angie described, of which she was working with these 7 people going through this disentanglement of the knots. I feel as if this is what we are born to do: help people heal this really tender, intimate part of their lives. So it is just such an honor that you are listening to this episode.
Yeah.
And we don't take this responsibility lightly. Please pray for us as we continue to have these really important conversations, not just about sex, but about God. So we thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sexual Confidence on Tap with Shannon Ethridge and friends. We love you for listening.
And thanks for tapping on us.